I'm here this afternoon in San Antonio with Sergeant Phillip Monk, retired, correct? And for my audience that may not know your story, can you give us just a real short synopsis of what occurred that made headline news nationally?
Sure. When I was active duty Air Force, I came back from a deployment and I worked for a major who happened to be an open lesbian commander. We had a young man in our unit that was alleged to have said something controversial, and my commander wanted to punish him for it, and what he said was basically that he was for traditional marriage. Now, as her advisor, I thought that was a bit harsh to punish for it, and so I stood up for him, and when my commander certainly didn't like my position, she felt like the new Air Force rules were that if you were against same-sex marriage or you spoke out against same-sex marriage or homosexuality, that was in some sort of way discrimination. And when I wouldn't see the situation the way my commander wanted me to, I was essentially fired from my position as her advisor, and my assignment was expedited to a new assignment.
So over a period of time you fought that, and
Yes.
kind of can you give a synopsis kind of how it kind of went during that period of time?
Sure. There's, some people think that, I just went right out and went in front of the media, but I spent a lot of time trying to work channels within the service, trying to do things the way, but at no level. I went to my boss's boss, and I talked to what we call the chain of command within the military. I went through my chain of command, and within office settings and closed door meetings, everybody would tell me to, just eat it. You have a great career. This situation is just too tough. But it was wrong. I shouldn't have been fired. And certainly the young man shouldn't have been punished for simply stating a view. He didn't actually discriminate against anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody would take up the case. I went and I sought for a military attorney, and they said, well, you're not actually charged with anything, so can't really help you. And so I reached out to First Liberty Institute in Plano, Texas, and I sought an attorney, and we brought it forward because it was wrong.
What did it take within you to be able to take that stand? Because you have or at that time had that additional, not only was it workplace, but it is military as well. So there's got to be additional consequences involved there potentially too.
There is, and the Air Force core values were service before self, excellence in all we do, but it's integrity first. And so the standing for what is true and right was what I was brought up with in the Air Force to do. So it wasn't anything outside the bounds. And so, but the thing that really got me going, and I think the Holy Spirit kind of poked me in the side, but one night we were sitting at dinner, and after dinner we were going through a Bible study, and we were talking with my young boys. I have teenage boys now, and on the television in the background was this story was playing out. It was a national news story about a young child that was on a school bus and was beaten by bullies on the bus, and the bus driver didn't stop it. Nobody stopped it but this guy. But the lesson I was giving to our boys was basically the Ephesians 5 thing, is that sometimes you have to stand up for what you believe in. And so one of my boys kind of overheard this in the background. He was like, so would you have us stand in this situation? Would you want us to put everything on the line and defend the defenseless? And I said, absolutely. I would actually be very upset with my children if they were on the bus and did nothing to defend the defenseless. And so one of the other boys that through this whole situation that was playing out, you know, my wife and I are openly talking about what's going on. Can you believe I'm getting removed from my position? Can you believe this commander is taking this position? Can you believe everybody that I'm talking to in my chain of command, nobody wants to help me out? And so my kids have been overhearing this, and so one of my boys basically said, so, you know, here we're talking about standing up, and you've been talking to mom about all this stuff, so what are you going to do about what you're going through? And I think that was, like I said, I think that was the Holy Spirit saying, you know,
That was your nudge.
Yeah, exactly, that was my nudge. You know, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? And it was then that I absolutely knew that I had to go forward, because my boys were waiting to see. And
Lead by example.
Exactly, and if I did nothing, that lesson would have haunted them for the rest of their lives as young men.
Yeah. You said walk the walk. Those words are easy to say, but tell me, what is it really like to walk the walk?
Well, I've been thinking, you know, I've had a lot of time to think, because everything is kind of over with and subsided. Outside, you know, a few left-wing, you know, websites, and people think that they have the whole story and they write stuff. Outside of that, but you know, looking back on it, there's immense. I had a lot of peace within the problem, and I don't know how to explain
That's a
that
good
to
word.
people. But God kind of provides during the issue, and when you know what you're doing is right and you're acting in accordance with what God would have you walk, then I found that there was an immense peace in that. And so, kind of on the outside, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of news stories. There was a lot of interviews, and there was a lot of controversy, and a lot of websites writing the worst things possible about who I am and what I believe. A lot of moving parts, a lot of competing agendas, but through the whole thing, as things were unfolding, there was just calm, and
In the midst of the storm.
in the midst of the storm, and I grew closer to my children, right? And I think my boys gained a profound respect and they could see for themselves, all right, so there are times where you stand, and I grew closer to God. And the funny thing is that, you know, this situation happened over the course of almost 2 years. And in that 2 years, you know, there would be ups and there would be downs. There would be times where I thought things were going to go my way. And there were times where it looked like it wasn't going away. But I will tell you, the times in which I would retreat back, or I would think, you know what, I'm done with this. I want to be done with this, is I would notice things would get a little bit angst. But the more I accepted it and moved forward, the more I saw God provide pathways to resolution with this.
So he directed your steps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, my wife and I, we tell a story of our friends. They will call the house and they'll be like, I just know that you guys are freaking out. You know, a new news story hit, or a new Huffington Post article, you know, that says that, you know, I'm the devil's spawn, that would hit, and people would call and they'd say, oh, I just know that you're, you know, going crazy. And we would say, no, we're just having a great time here at the house.
Just having a great
So-
time. Wow.
And
Wow.
so-
Were there dark moments?
Absolutely, there were dark moments. One of the things that I liked, you know, reflecting back on it, is there were a lot of times where I was worried about the outcome of the situation versus the, you know, overcoming or moving through the situation. I think that God puts, I kind of saw this on Facebook, and I think it rings true now that I've experienced this, is that obedience to God is likely to bring the obstacles into your life. Do you know what I mean? We sometimes as Christians have this belief that if you get the Christianity piece right, that everything's going to be like sunshine, roses, and butterflies. But I think the obedience brings the opportunity and the obstacles, and it's moving through that is, it becomes the piece that I was talking about is to continue moving forward through that and following God's will for you.
So in having gone through this journey now, do you feel that it has had a positive impact on your life and the life of your children?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of my friends, behind the scenes when this is going on in the military culture, when there's trouble, there's this natural tendency for everybody not to want to be involved about it. And so there was this natural vacuum of my support system.
Yeah.
And so
I think that would be true even if it's not military.
I imagine so. I imagine if you talk to a lot of people, I've become good friends with Aaron and Melissa Klein. If you talk to them, it can be a very lonely place when it comes to your support structure. But now that they call me and they say, well, now that everything's kind of done, would you do it again? And
That's a good question.
And I would say, absolutely. I can't imagine living with myself, not having done the right thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And my pastor and I talk about that often. I think men in our generation are longing to live up to the obstacles that are put in our lives. But for so many, we fail to challenge the obstacle course, and that has this internal harm that comes to us. And I think had I shrunk from this situation, I would have beat myself up for it. I think my kids would have saw me as a charlatan, and the lesson that I was trying to,
Did that help strengthen you, the fact that you knew your sons were looking at you?
Absolutely. The way they looked at me after this meant a great deal.
Yeah.
And it reinforced my position that,
You got to do it.
Well, it strengthened my backbone.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, absolutely. Do you find yourself now in a position where you can be more of an encouragement to others that are facing like-kind situations in their work environment or wherever they may be?
I find that if I go out and I speak to, I'm always at the end of sessions, I always try to stick around, and people will ask me questions, what should I do in this situation, and what should I do in this situation, or this is going on at work, what should I do, how should I handle it? And my advice to people is simply live out your faith.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
There's in our society right now, I think the Christian people are pocketing their Christianity Monday through Saturday, and then they take it out of their pockets on Sundays. And we would be well better off if we just live out our faith.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, there is a current on the outside, on the left side, that will act out and live out their faith every day. They live out their faith when it comes to picking judges. They live out their faith when it comes to picking school teachers. They live out their faith when it comes to every law. They live out their faith unabashedly, unashamed. And what have we gotten in our country? Because, and I'll tell you, for me, culture is basically the temperature of Christians' ability to live out their faith.
Well said. Well said. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share with my audience?
I challenge your audience to get involved, and no matter where they're at, live out your faith. Live out your Christian faith.
All right, very good. I appreciate your time so much this afternoon.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having me.
much.